My name is Sophia, and I was 15 when my father drove me to Union Station in Chicago, walked away with his new family, and left me sitting alone on a frozen metal bench with nothing but a tattered duffel bag and $37 to my name. For 7 hours, I waited for him to return, watching trains depart to destinations I couldn't afford to reach, while he posted photos from a ski resort in Aspen, celebrating with the people who truly matter. He thought he was discarding a burden, never knowing that the grandmother he'd forbidden me from seeing was worth $95 million, or that the worthless daughter he abandoned would inherit $15 million at 21. What haunts him most from his federal prison cell isn't the money he lost or the 22-year sentence. It's knowing that his betrayal didn't just set me free, it gave me the tools and motivation for the most calculated revenge in family court history. If you're reading this story right now, I'd love to know what you think about family betrayal and justice. Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories about family relationships that take devastating turns. The morning air in Dad's Mercedes had always been thick with unspoken resentment, but that December day, it felt like breathing through concrete. I pressed my forehead against the tinted passenger window, watching the familiar streets of Lincoln Park blur past for what I didn't know would be the last time. My battered duffel bag sat between my feet, stuffed with the clothes I'd hastily packed when Dad had shown up at Mom's apartment that morning, claiming we needed to take a little trip to sort some things out. "Dad, are we going to be back before Wednesday?" I asked, trying to cut through the silence that had stretched between us since he'd picked me up. "I have that presentation for AP History, remember? The one about Reconstruction that I've been working on all month." His knuckles went white on the steering wheel. "You'll manage, Sophia, you always do." Something ice cold slithered down my spine at his tone. This wasn't the dad who used to quiz me on vocabulary words over dinner, who had stayed up until midnight helping me build a replica of the Alamo for 4th grade. This was the stranger he'd become since marrying Victoria 8 months ago, cold, calculating, and increasingly absent from my life. "But Dad, I just need to know." "Stop talking for a minute, okay? I need to concentrate." I swallowed hard, tasting the bitter energy drink I'd grabbed at Mom's before he'd arrived. She'd been passed out on the couch again, empty vodka bottles creating a glass graveyard on the coffee table. Dad had looked at her with such disgust when he'd come to collect me, muttering something about genetic predisposition under his breath. Union Station loomed ahead, its neoclassical facade and towering columns making it look like a temple to broken dreams. Dad pulled into the passenger drop-off zone, not bothering with the parking garage. My stomach twisted into knots. "Aren't you coming in with me?" I asked as he popped the trunk with unnecessary force. He was already out of the car, yanking my duffel bag from the back with barely controlled aggression. I scrambled to follow, my legs feeling unsteady on the icy pavement. The December wind cut through my thrift store jacket. The one Victoria had commented made me look homeless at Thanksgiving dinner. "Here," Dad said, shoving the bag at me. His eyes kept darting toward the station entrance, then to his Rolex. "You're 15, Sophia. Time to learn some independence." "Independence from what? Dad, you haven't even told me where I'm supposed to go, or..." That's when I saw them. Victoria stood just inside the glass doors, her perfectly manicured hand resting possessively on her daughter Ashley's shoulder. Ashley was 13, blonde like her mother, wearing the kind of designer winter coat I'd see in magazine ads and no better than to even dream about. Victoria's son, 9-year-old Tyler, was absorbed in his latest iPhone game, oblivious to everything around him. Victoria caught my eye and smiled, that cold, triumphant smile I'd seen her practice in mirrors when she thought no one was watching. "Dad," my voice came out small and breakable. He was already walking toward them, not looking back. His hand found Victoria's waist, pulling her close as he kissed her cheek with theatrical affection. Tyler looked up from his game long enough for Dad to ruffle his hair lovingly, the way he used to ruffle mine before Victoria entered our lives. "Dad," I called louder, panic rising in my throat like floodwater. "Dad, you haven't given me a ticket or money for food or..." "Dad!" A security guard in a crisp uniform glanced over with concern. A businesswoman pulling a wheeled suitcase stepped around me with obvious irritation, but Dad didn't turn around. He guided his new family toward the exit, Tyler glancing back at me once with something that might have been confusion or might have been pity. Then they were gone. I stood frozen in the middle of the bustling terminal, my duffel bag weighing down my shoulders, staring at the spot where they'd disappeared. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. Any moment now, Dad would come back through those doors, laughing about what a terrible joke this had been. Any moment now. But the moments stretched into minutes. 5, 10, 30. A station security officer, his uniform clean and pressed, approached me with measured steps. "Miss, are you waiting for someone?" "My dad," I said automatically. He forgot something in the car. He'll be right back." The officer's eyes, brown and kind behind wire-rimmed glasses, took in my duffel bag, my panicked expression, the way I kept staring at the doors. "Would you like to sit down while you wait? There are benches over there." I nodded, not trusting my voice, and made my way to a cold metal bench near the departure boards. The duffel bag slumped beside me as I sat, and I finally looked inside it properly. 2 changes of clothes, my phone charger, a hairbrush, my AP history textbook, a crumpled $37 in the front pocket, money I'd been saving from my part-time job at the local bookstore. $37, that was my entire fortune. The station bustled around me with the energy of the holidays, families reuniting with tears and laughter, business travelers rushing to catch connections, college students heading home for winter break. Everyone had somewhere to go, someone expecting them, everyone except me. My phone, with its spiderweb crack from when I dropped it last month, and Dad had said it wasn't worth fixing, showed 4:23 p.m. I scrolled through my contacts, each name representing another dead end. Mom would be unconscious until tomorrow morning at the earliest. My best friend Jessica was in Florida with her family for the holidays. The other kids from school, we weren't close enough for me to call crying from a train station. Then I saw it, a contact I'd almost deleted a dozen times, but never quite could bring myself to erase. Grandma Rose, Dad's mother, the woman he'd cut off 3 years ago after some explosive fight about meddling and boundaries that I'd never fully understood. The grandmother who used to teach me to play poker on rainy Sunday afternoons and slip me $20 bills for emergencies before everything fell apart. My stomach growled, reminding me that I'd skipped lunch, too anxious about this mysterious trip to eat. I unwrapped a granola bar I'd found in the duffel bag's side pocket, probably left over from a school field trip weeks ago, and ate it slowly, making it last. 5:45 p.m. The winter darkness was already settling over the terminal through the high windows. The station would close at 1 a.m. Then what? Where would I go? The thought of spending the night on the streets made me feel physically sick. A family walked past, mother, father, 2 young children holding hands in a chain. The youngest, maybe 4 years old, was crying about being tired. Her father scooped her up effortlessly, settling her on his shoulders, and she giggled through her tears. "Better?" he asked, and she nodded against the top of his head. That's when I broke. The tears came silently at first, just hot tracks down my cheeks that I quickly wiped away. But then my chest started heaving, and a sob escaped before I could stop it. I pulled my knees up to my chest, making myself as small as possible on the bench, and cried into my jeans. "Honey," a gentle voice, "honey, are you okay?" I looked up to find an elderly woman, maybe 70, wearing a purple wool coat and holding a steaming cup of coffee from the station cafe. She sat down beside me without invitation, close enough to be comforting, but not so close as to be intrusive. "My dad left me here," I heard myself say. "He just abandoned me." Her face hardened with a grandmother's protective fury. "How old are you, sweetheart?" 15. She pulled out her phone. "I'm calling the police." "Wait, please." I grabbed her hand, surprising both of us. "I have someone I can call, my grandmother. I haven't talked to her in a while." The woman studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "Call her now, while I sit here with you." With shaking fingers, I found Grandma Rose's number again. It rang once, twice, 3 times. I was about to hang up when her voice came through, exactly as I remembered, firm but warm, like aged whiskey and velvet combined. "Hello." "Grandma," my voice cracked completely. "It's Sophia." A sharp intake of breath. "Sophia, darling, what's wrong? Where are you?" Dad left me at Union Station. He drove away with Victoria and her kids, and he left me here with no money and no ticket, and I don't know what to do. Stop, her voice cut through my panic like a knife through butter. Which entrance are you near? The main entrance, by the departure boards. Are you safe right now? Is anyone bothering you? No, there's a nice lady sitting with me. Good, you stay right there, don't move. Don't go with anyone except me, I'm coming to get you. But Grandma, it's at least 2 hours from Evanston. I'll be there in 90 minutes, I have some calls to make first. Her voice hardened. Sophia, this is not your fault. Whatever that son of mine told you, whatever he made you believe, this is not your fault. The line went dead. The woman in purple squeezed my shoulder gently. Your grandmother. I nodded, wiping my eyes with my sleeve. Good, family should protect family. She glanced toward the doors where Dad had disappeared. Some people forget that. We sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes. She bought me a sandwich from the cafe without asking, just returned with turkey and Swiss and placed it in my hands. I devoured it, not realizing how hungry I'd been. What's your name, honey? Sophia Reeves. I'm Margaret Chen, I'm a retired teacher. She paused. Sophia, what your father did to you today, abandoning a child at a public transportation hub, that's not just cruel. It's illegal. There will be consequences. Something in her tone made me look at her more carefully. Despite her gentle demeanor, there was steel in her eyes. Are you sure you're retired? From teaching, I still practice law part-time. Her smile was sharp. Family law, specifically, and I've never seen a clearer case of child abandonment in 30 years of practice. At exactly 6:47 p.m. I saw her. Grandma Rose walked through the main entrance like she owned the place, her silver hair pulled back in an elegant bun, wearing a long black coat that probably cost more than most people's rent. But it wasn't just her appearance that commanded attention. It was the way she moved, the confidence that comes from real power, and the two men in expensive suits flanking her. She spotted me immediately and crossed the terminal in long strides. Sophia! She pulled me into a fierce hug that smelled like her signature perfume and fierce protectiveness. Are you hurt? Did anyone bother you? No, I'm okay, just scared. She pulled back to study my face, her hands gentle on my shoulders. We're going to fix this, all of it. She turned to Margaret. Thank you for staying with her. May I have your contact information? We may need a witness statement. Margaret handed her a business card. Margaret Chen, attorney at law. And yes, I saw everything. The abandonment, the distress, all of it. That child has been sitting here alone for over 3 hours. One of the men stepped forward. Mrs. Blackwood, we should go. There's a lot to prepare before tomorrow. Mrs. Blackwood? I looked at my grandmother in confusion. But your name is Rose Reeves. Rose Reeves was the name I used when I was trying to be small enough that your father wouldn't feel threatened by the family money. Her smile was cold. It didn't work, so now I'm Rose Blackwood again. And you, my dear, are about to learn who you really are. The car waiting outside wasn't the modest sedan I remembered from before the family rift. It was a black town car with a driver who held the door for us like we were royalty. Grandma, I don't understand. What's happening? Home first, she said, settling beside me in the leather interior. Explanations over dinner. But Sophia, I need you to know, everything you believed about our family, about our financial situation, was a lie your father constructed to control you. We weren't heading toward the modest Evanston house I remembered from childhood visits. The car glided through parts of the city I'd only seen in magazines, tree-lined streets in Lake Forest with historic mansions set back from the road, their windows glowing warmly against the winter night. Grandma, where are we going? Home, she said simply, but there was something in her voice, satisfaction, maybe even vindication. The car turned through a set of imposing iron gates that opened automatically. The driveway curved through professionally manicured grounds lit by discreet landscape lighting, and then the house came into view. No, the estate. What is this place? I breathed. This is where I live, where we live now. Grandma's voice carried layers of meaning. There are things about your family, about our legacy, that your father never wanted you to know. The house was a 3-story Georgian masterpiece of brick and limestone, with tall windows and a circular driveway dominated by a fountain that somehow kept flowing despite the December cold. It looked like something from a movie about old Chicago money and political dynasties. One of the men from the station helped us out of the car. "Mrs. Blackwood, I'll have the preliminary paperwork ready by 8 a.m. The emergency custody filing is already in progress." "Thank you, Jonathan. We'll meet for breakfast at 7. Inside, the house was even more overwhelming. Marble floors, a sweeping staircase with a crystal chandelier, original artwork that belonged in the Art Institute. A woman in a crisp uniform appeared immediately. "Mrs. Blackwood, welcome home. Shall I prepare the rose guest suite for Miss Sophia?" "Yes, Maria, and please have dinner served in the family dining room in 30 minutes. Something comforting, perhaps your excellent beef stew." "Of course, ma'am." Grandma led me through the house to a smaller dining room. Though smaller here, still meant a table for 10 and a chandelier that cast rainbow patterns across silk wallpaper. She poured herself a glass of wine and me a crystal glass of what turned out to be fresh squeezed apple cider. "I imagine you have questions," she said, sitting across from me. "This isn't the house I remember visiting." "No, that was a house I rented in Evanston after your grandfather died, when I was pretending to be someone I wasn't, trying to be small enough, modest enough, that your father wouldn't feel threatened by the family wealth." She took a sip of wine. "It was a failed experiment. He cut me off anyway the moment I questioned his choices." "But how, all of this?" "Your grandfather, my husband, wasn't the insurance adjuster your father told you he was. Daniel built Blackwood Industries from nothing. Started with a small construction company in 1978 and turned it into a real estate and development empire. When he died 6 years ago, he left everything in a very specific trust structure, one that your father has been trying to break ever since." Maria appeared with bowls of stew that smelled like heaven and fresh bread rolls, still warm from the oven. I hadn't realized how hungry I was until I started eating. "Your father received his inheritance immediately," Grandma continued. $7 million, free and clear. It should have been enough to set him up for life, to provide for you properly, to build something meaningful. $7 million, I nearly choked on my stew. Instead, he spent it all. Bad investments, trying to impress people like Victoria and her country club friends, living beyond even those substantial means. When the money ran out 18 months ago, he came to me demanding more, demanding access to the rest of the trust. "The rest? Your grandfather was worth approximately $95 million when he died." My spoon clattered against the bowl. "The majority is in various trusts, some for me, some for charities we support, and a significant portion for you. $15 million to be accessed when you turn 21 or earlier under specific circumstances." "What circumstances?" "If you were ever abandoned or endangered by your legal guardians, if you needed funds for education, if your parents were found to be financially exploiting you." Her smile was razor sharp. "Your grandfather was very specific about protecting you from exactly what your father has become." "Dad knows about this money." "Oh yes, he's known since the wool was red. He spent 4 years trying to get power of attorney over your trust, trying to convince judges that I was senile, that the money would be better managed by him as your father." She paused to let that sink in. "He never expected me to fight back, never expected me to have kept such detailed records of his attempts." "Is that why he cut you off, because you wouldn't give him my money?" "Partially, but also because I started asking uncomfortable questions about whether you were being properly cared for, whether the money he claimed to need for your expenses was actually being spent on you." She reached across the table to take my hand. "I hired a private investigator 8 months ago when he stopped allowing me to see you." "You did?" "I knew about Victoria before their wedding was announced. I knew about the debts he was hiding from her. I knew he'd been terminated from his job at the marketing firm and was pretending to go to work every day." She squeezed my hand. "What I didn't know, what I never imagined, was that he would abandon you like this." After dinner, she led me upstairs to what she called the Rose Suite. It was easily 4 times the size of my bedroom at Mom's apartment, with its own bathroom and a window seat overlooking the gardens. Fresh clothes were laid out on the bed, somehow in my size. "Maria has an uncanny ability to estimate measurements," Grandma explained, seeing my surprise. "There are more clothes in the armoire. We'll go shopping properly tomorrow." Grandma, I don't understand. Why didn't you tell me any of this before? She sat on the edge of the four-poster bed, suddenly looking every one of her 75 years. Your father forbade it, and as long as he had custody, I had to be careful. Any wrong move, and he would have disappeared with you entirely, possibly to another state where I'd have no legal standing. Her eyes hardened with calculation. I've been waiting, gathering evidence, building an ironclad case for the day he made a mistake big enough that no court would side with him. She pulled an envelope from her coat pocket, aged and yellowed at the edges. This is for you. Your grandfather wrote it before he died, with instructions that you should receive it when you were old enough to understand the stakes. My name was written on the front in shaky handwriting. Inside, the letter was dated just 2 months before he died. My dearest Sophia asterisk, if you are reading this, then you are old enough to understand that family can be both a blessing and a battlefield, that love and money can become tangled in dangerous ways, and that sometimes the people who should protect us become the greatest threat to our well-being. The money I've left for you isn't just currency, it's power. Power to pursue your education without compromise, power to take risks and follow your dreams, power to walk away from anyone who tries to use or manipulate you. Your father is my son, and I love him, but I've watched him mistake entitlement for ambition, money for success. I fear what he might do if he had control of your inheritance. That's why I've structured things as I have, why I've built in safeguards. Trust your grandmother. She has a steel spine and the strategic mind of a general. More importantly, she loves you for who you are, not what you're worth. Use this gift wisely, but don't let it use you. Money is a tool, not a master. All my love and hopes for your future. Grandfather Daniel. I couldn't sleep that night. I sat in the window seat, looking out at the gardens lit by moonlight, my mind racing through everything I'd learned. My entire understanding of our family's situation had been a carefully constructed lie. We weren't struggling financially. Dad had squandered a fortune and was now trying to steal mine. My phone buzzed with a notification from Instagram. Against my better judgment, I opened it. There they were, Dad, Victoria, Ashley, and Tyler, all smiles at what was clearly an expensive ski lodge restaurant. The caption read, "Perfect family getaway, making memories with the people who matter most, Red Skier blessed." Posted 2 hours ago. While I had been sitting alone in Union Station, terrified and abandoned, he had been toasting champagne with his real family. I screenshot it before I could think better of it, then turned off my phone and finally let myself cry. Not tears of fear this time, but tears of pure, crystalline rage. The next 3 weeks passed in a whirlwind of lawyers, tutors, and what Grandma called strategic preparation. She had assembled what she referred to as the team, not just legal counsel, but an entire support system designed to rebuild what my father had destroyed. Posture Sophia. Miss Catherine's correction was gentle but firm, her hand light on my shoulder. You've been trying to make yourself invisible for so long, you've forgotten how to command a room. The deportment and confidence coach had been Grandma's idea. Not to change who you are, she'd assured me, but to give you the tools you'll need. The world we're entering, courtrooms, depositions, possibly media attention, has rules. I want you to know those rules so you can choose when to follow them and when to shatter them completely. Miss Catherine was teaching me how to sit like I belonged in important rooms, how to make eye contact without flinching, how to speak so people had to listen. It felt like learning a new language, one where my body spoke as loudly as my words. Better, she said as I walked across the room again, this time with my shoulders back and my chin raised. Remember, you're not pretending to be someone else. You're discovering who you've always been under all that fear. In the afternoons, I worked with Dr. Martinez, a therapist who specialized in adolescent trauma and family manipulation. His office was set up in the east wing of the house specifically for our sessions. I don't want you to think I'm weak, I told him during our fourth meeting. Needing help, I mean. Sophia, your father abandoned you at a train station with $37 and no plan for your survival. Most adults would struggle to cope with that level of betrayal. The fact that you're here, working through it, building strength from it, that's remarkable resilience. I still have nightmares about the station, about waiting for him to come back. In the dreams, do you want him to come back? I thought about it carefully. No, I want him to see that I don't need him to come back. I want him to realize what he threw away." Dr. Martinez smiled slightly. "That's a profound shift from victim to victor. Hold on to that feeling." But the legal preparation was the most intense part. Jonathan Chen and his team had transformed what Grandma called the war room, a conference room on the first floor where bankers' boxes of evidence covered every surface. Financial records, emails, text messages, even social media posts going back years. "This is from 4 months ago," showed me a printed email exchange between Dad and Victoria. "Your father explicitly states, and I quote, 'The kid is sitting on 15 million at 21, and I'll be damned if I let that slip through my fingers.'" The kid, not even my name. Exactly. This establishes clear financial motive for maintaining custody, which, combined with the abandonment, creates a devastating legal picture. Ms. Rodriguez, one of the associate attorneys, looked grimly satisfied. "We also have evidence of the credit cards he opened in your name when you were 13. I'd learned about those the week before, nearly $60,000 in debt that Grandma's team was having expunged from my record. He used my identity for a shopping spree for Victoria's birthday," I said, still struggling to process the betrayal. "Among other things, vacations, jewelry, even payments for Ashley's private school tuition." Jonathan's voice was carefully controlled professional fury. Classic financial abuse of a minor. But it wasn't just about building our case. Grandma insisted I understand every aspect of what was happening. "Knowledge is power, darling. Your father kept you ignorant because ignorance made you controllable. Never again." So I learned about trust law and fiduciary responsibility, about custody statutes and financial fraud. I learned that Dad had been fired from 3 jobs in the past 2 years, each time for inappropriate use of company resources. I learned that he'd been telling people for months that I was troubled and difficult to manage, laying groundwork for some plan I was only beginning to understand. He was going to have me declared incompetent when I turned 21, wasn't he? I asked Jonathan one cold afternoon in early January. "Try to get permanent control of my trust fund." Jonathan and Grandma exchanged glances. "We believe that was the long-term strategy. Yes," he said carefully. "There are draft documents we've obtained through discovery that suggest as much." The rage that had been simmering since that December night boiled over. He was going to destroy my entire life for money he'd already proven he couldn't manage responsibly. The 15 million would have been gone within 3 years, based on his spending patterns, Grandma added, possibly sooner given Victoria's tastes. 4 weeks after the abandonment, we got word that Dad had been served with papers while on another ski vacation, this time in Vail. Someone had recorded the process server finding him at the lodge's restaurant, his face cycling from smug dismissal to genuine shock as he read the emergency custody motion and fraud allegations. The video went viral within hours, shared thousands of times with captions like "Deadbeat Dad Gets Served" and "Karma is a process server." "Perfect," Grandma said, watching it with cold satisfaction. "Let everyone see his true character." The preliminary hearing was scheduled for February 15th. Dad hired what must have been an expensive legal team, probably funded by Victoria's rapidly depleting resources. His lawyers immediately filed countermotions, claiming that Grandma had kidnapped me and was manipulating a traumatized child for financial gain. "Let them come," Jonathan said confidently. "We have everything documented, including security footage from Union Station showing the abandonment." There's footage I hadn't known. Crystal clear digital video, him walking away while you call after him, you sitting alone for hours, very compelling evidence. Jonathan's smile was sharp. Juries don't like child abandonment. But Dad wasn't going quietly. He launched his own PR campaign, calling extended family members with his version of events. According to him, I'd been acting out violently toward Victoria's children, and he'd simply been taking me to a therapeutic facility when I'd run away at the station. Some relatives believed him. Others saw through it. The family fractured into opposing camps, and my phone filled with messages ranging from support to condemnation. "Block them all," Grandma advised. "Their opinions are irrelevant, only the truth matters now." But the truth was becoming a weapon. Ms. Rodriguez discovered that Victoria's ex-husband had filed similar financial fraud complaints during their divorce. Dad's former business partners came forward with stories of embezzled funds and breached contracts. Even Ashley's private school counselor reached out, concerned about behavioral changes since the marriage and willing to testify about suspicious bruises she'd documented. "He's not just a bad father," I said one evening, reading through the accumulated evidence. "He's a predator." "Yes," Grandma said simply, "and it's time the world knew it." The Chicago Tribune picked up the story first. Abandoned teen fights back against father's financial betrayal. Then the national outlets followed. My name was kept confidential due to minor protection laws, but Dad's wasn't. Neither was Victoria's. Their perfect family image imploded in real time. Victoria's country club friends distanced themselves. The private school questioned whether Ashley and Tyler should continue attending. The ski resort actually banned them from returning after other guests complained about their disrupting behavior following the process serving incident. Dad tried to call me once, 3 days before the hearing. Grandma had warned me he might attempt contact, and I was prepared. "Sophia, sweetheart." His voice was different, wheedling, desperate. "This has all been a terrible misunderstanding. You know I would never actually." "You left me at Union Station," I interrupted, my voice steady thanks to weeks of practice. "With $37, no food, and no way to get home. I was coming back, I just needed to." "You posted ski vacation photos an hour later, making memories with the people who matter most." I could hear him intake breath sharply. "I screenshot them, so did my lawyers." Silence, then his voice hardened. "You have no right to ruin my life like this. Victoria's talking about leaving me, the kids won't speak to me, I can't find work. You ruined your own life the moment you chose money over your daughter. You ungrateful little." I hung up, my hands were shaking, but I'd done it, I'd faced him down. The hearing arrived with February snow and a media circus. Reporters, photographers, protesters, some supporting me, others defending family rights and parental authority. Someone had made Justice for Sophia t-shirts. Someone else carried signs reading, "Children are not ATMs." Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was electric with tension. Dad had lost weight, his expensive suit hanging loose on his frame. Victoria sat several rows behind him, their united front had clearly crumbled. Her children were notably absent, rumored to be staying with Victoria's sister in Minneapolis. Judge Patricia Reeves, no relation, despite the name, called the court to order. She was a small woman with razor-sharp eyes and in reputation for having zero tolerance for child abuse. "Before we begin," she announced, looking directly at my father, "I want to make something clear. The preliminary evidence I've reviewed is deeply disturbing. Abandoning a minor child at a public transportation facility without resources or supervision isn't just negligent, it's criminal. Mr. Reeves, depending on how these proceedings unfold, I will be recommending criminal charges to the state's attorney." Dad's lawyer stood quickly. "Your Honor, my client maintains that this was a miscommunication that has been wildly blown out of proportion by." "A miscommunication?" Judge Reeves' voice could have frozen Lake Michigan. "Counselor, there is security footage. Clear, unambiguous footage of your client walking away while his 15-year-old daughter calls after him. That's not miscommunication, that's abandonment." The hearing proceeded with mechanical precision. Our side presented evidence of abandonment, financial fraud, identity theft, and years of emotional manipulation. Their side tried to paint me as troubled, Grandma as manipulative, and the whole situation as a family dispute blown out of proportion. Then came the moment I'd been both dreading and anticipating, my turn to testify. I stood, my legs steadier than I'd expected thanks to Miss Catherine's training. The courtroom fell silent. "Your Honor," I began, my voice carrying clearly to every corner of the room, "I spent 7 hours at Union Station that December day. 7 hours wondering what I'd done wrong, why I wasn't good enough, why my father could walk away so easily." I looked directly at Dad for the first time since entering the courtroom. He couldn't meet my eyes. But I understand now that this wasn't about me at all. It was about $15 million. I was never his daughter, I was his future payday. And when he couldn't access that money legally, he decided to get rid of the inconvenience I represented. Dad's face went red, He started to stand, but his lawyer yanked him back down. I don't want his money, I continued, the lie coming easily. I want my freedom. I want to live with someone who values me as a person, not as a trust fund with legs. I want to be able to trust that I won't be abandoned again the moment I become inconvenient. Judge Reeves nodded slowly. Thank you, Miss Reeves. I've heard enough for today. The gavel came down like thunder. Temporary custody is granted to Mrs. Rose Blackwood pending full investigation. Mr. Reeves, you are ordered to have no contact with your daughter except through court-supervised visits. All financial accounts related to the minor are frozen pending fraud investigation. As we left the courthouse, Dad's voice cut through the crowd noise. This isn't over. You're destroying everything, my marriage, my reputation, my life, all for money that should be mine. I turned back, meeting his desperate gaze with the steady confidence Miss Catherine had taught me. No, Dad. You destroyed your own life the moment you chose greed over love. I'm just making sure everyone knows who you really are. Grandma's hand found mine, warm and reassuring. Come, darling, we have a future to build. Behind us, I could hear Victoria's voice, shrill with panic. This is your fault, David. You said she was just a troubled kid. You said the money would be easy to get. Their perfect family was disintegrating in real time, just like mine had years ago. The difference was that I had someone who genuinely loved me helping to rebuild from the wreckage. Dad had only the destruction he'd created himself. The criminal trial was set for 6 months out. But before that came the depositions, 3 grueling days in sterile conference rooms with Dad's lawyers trying every angle to break me down. Isn't it true you were hospitalized for depression at age 13? Mr. Brennan, Dad's lead attorney, asked on day 2. Yes, after my parents' divorce and discovering my mother's addiction issues. It's well managed with therapy. And you've had disciplinary problems at school. I was suspended once for fighting a boy who said my family was trailer trash. I was defending my mother's honor, even though she didn't deserve it. Every question was designed to paint me as unstable, vindictive, undeserving of sympathy. But Ms. Rodriguez had prepared me well. You seem remarkably composed for a traumatized child, Brennan observed during one particularly heated exchange. Abandonment teaches you to be self-sufficient, I replied evenly, though I suppose you wouldn't understand that. The financial investigation revealed horrors beyond even Grandma's expectations. Dad hadn't just opened credit cards in my name, he'd been systematically draining accounts Grandfather had established for my education. Small amounts he thought wouldn't be noticed, but over 4 years it totaled nearly $300,000. Federal wire fraud charges, Jonathan said quietly after reviewing the FBI's findings. We're looking at serious prison time. But the real bombshell came from an unexpected source. Tyler, Victoria's 9-year-old son, had been keeping a digital diary on his tablet. His teacher, concerned about his recent behavioral changes, had alerted Child Services, who subpoenaed the device. The entries were devastating. December 10th, Mom says we're rich now because of Sophia's money. David yells about money every day. I miss when it was just me and Mom and Ashley. December 18th, David said Sophia is going away forever soon and we won't have to pretend to like her anymore. Mom looked happy. January 5th, David hit Mom when she said maybe we should bring Sophia back. She had a bruise but said she walked into a door. She didn't walk into any door. January 12th, I heard David on the phone saying Sophia was damaged goods and it would be easy to prove she was crazy. I don't think Sophia is crazy. I think David is mean. Child Protective Services opened their own investigation. Victoria's picture-perfect family wasn't just cracking, it was imploding under the weight of systematic abuse. Meanwhile, I was transforming. The frightened, abandoned girl from Union Station was evolving into something harder, more focused. Dr. Martinez called it post-traumatic growth. I called it becoming who I was always meant to be. You're not the same person who walked into this house 2 months ago, Grandma observed one evening as we reviewed legal strategy in the library. That person was weak, desperate for approval from people who didn't deserve it. That person survived, and surviving made you strong enough for what comes next. What came next was revenge. Not the hot, impulsive kind that destroys the seeker along with the target, but cold, calculated justice that would ensure Dad could never hurt another child again. The plan crystallized during a conversation with Margaret Chen, the lawyer who'd first found me at the station. She'd become an informal advisor, someone with decades of experience in family law and child protection. Your father's pattern suggests he's done this before, she said during one of our weekly coffee meetings. Men like him don't usually start with abandonment, they escalate to it. What do you mean? I think we should look into his relationship with Victoria's ex-husband, and possibly his treatment of you before the abandonment. Financial abuse often runs parallel to emotional abuse. She was right. Once we started digging, the pattern emerged. Dad had isolated me from friends by constantly moving us to new apartments. He destroyed my relationships with extended family through lies and manipulation. He'd systematically undermined my self-esteem while positioning himself as my only source of support. Classic abuser behavior, and now we could prove it. The media attention intensified as more details emerged. Dad had become a cautionary tale about financial abuse and parental manipulation. Victoria, desperate to salvage her reputation, began giving interviews painting herself as another victim of his manipulation. He told me Sophia was disturbed, she claimed in a segment on Chicago Tonight. He said she needed professional help and that he was trying to get it for her. I had no idea he was planning to just leave her there. It was a lie, contradicted by dozens of text messages we'd obtained through discovery. But it showed how thoroughly their alliance had crumbled. The preliminary hearing for the criminal charges was scheduled for March, but Dad made one last desperate gambit before then. My mother, sober for perhaps the first time in years, appeared at the gates of Grandma's estate on a cold February morning. I watched from an upstairs window as she spoke with the security guard, gesturing wildly. She wants to see you, Grandma told me after speaking with security. Claims she's been getting clean, wants to make amends. Did Dad send her? Almost certainly. She mentioned something about rightful inheritance to the guard. I could have refused to see her. Should have, probably. But I needed to look her in the eye and see if there was anything left of the woman who'd once read me bedtime stories and sung lullabies. There wasn't. The woman who sat across from me in Grandma's study was hollow-eyed and desperate, her hands shaking with either withdrawal or nerves. Sophia, baby, you have to understand. Your father called me, told me what was happening. This inheritance money, it should be for family, real family. You mean it should be for your next bottle of vodka? She flinched. I'm clean now, 32 days sober. Congratulations. That's 32 more days than you managed when I actually needed you. Don't be cruel, I'm your mother. No, I said quietly. You're the woman who gave birth to me. Mothers protect their children. You chose alcohol over me every single day for 3 years. She tried tears then, the crocodile kind she'd always used to manipulate Dad during their fights. I want us to be a family again. Take the money and we can start over somewhere new, just us. Get out, my voice was calm, but there must have been something in my eyes that scared her. Get out of this house and don't ever come back. If you contact me again, I'll have you arrested for harassment. She left, but not before screaming that I'd regret this, that blood was thicker than water, that I owed her for giving me life. Do you regret it? Grandma asked after the security guards had escorted her off the property. The only thing I regret is that it took me this long to see who she really was. The criminal hearing arrived with spring rain and another media circus. This time, protesters from child advocacy groups had joined the Justice for Sophia crowd. Dad had become a symbol of everything wrong with how society treats children, as property to be exploited rather than people to be protected. Inside the courtroom, he looked like a different man. The expensive clothes were gone, replaced by an ill-fitting public defender suit. The arrogant confidence had been replaced by the hollow stare of someone who'd finally realized the consequences of his choices. Judge Harrison, a stern man in his 60s with a reputation for harsh sentences in child abuse cases, reviewed the charges. Mr. David Reeves, you are charged with child abandonment, a Class 4 felony, financial fraud involving a minor, a Class 3 felony, identity theft, a Class 2 felony, and wire fraud, a federal offense carrying up to 20 years imprisonment. The prosecutor, Ms. Kelly Davies, was a force of nature. She'd taken the case personally after reviewing the evidence. Your Honor, this isn't just criminal negligence. This is a calculated campaign of financial and emotional abuse designed to exploit a child for monetary gain. She presented the timeline methodically. Dad's mounting debts, his knowledge of my trust fund, his systematic isolation of me from grandma, the identity theft, and finally the abandonment, all part of a long-term plan to gain control of my inheritance. The defendant didn't just abandon his daughter on a whim. He orchestrated her abandonment as part of a broader scheme to convince the court she was unstable and needed a guardian to manage her affairs. Specifically, him. Dad's public defender tried to argue for a plea deal, painting him as a desperate man who'd made poor choices under financial pressure. But the evidence was overwhelming. Then came the moment I'd been preparing for, my victim impact statement. I stood at the podium, looking out at the packed courtroom. Dad still wouldn't meet my eyes. Your Honor, when my father left me at Union Station that December day, he thought he was abandoning a problem. What he actually did was free me to become the person I was always meant to be. My voice was steady, clear, carrying to every corner of the room. He spent years telling me I was worthless, that I was lucky he kept me around, that no one else would ever want me. But he was wrong. My grandmother wanted me. The teachers who saw potential in me wanted me. The friends I'm making now want me. I finally looked directly at him. You didn't throw away garbage that day, Dad. You threw away the best thing that ever happened to you, and now everyone knows it. The sentencing came 2 weeks later. Dad stood as Judge Harrison read the verdict. Mr. Reeves, in 30 years on this bench, I have rarely seen such calculated cruelty toward a child. You abandoned your daughter not in a moment of desperation, but as part of a premeditated plan to steal her inheritance. You violated the most sacred trust that exists, that between parent and child. His voice hardened. I sentence you to 22 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole for the first 12 years. Upon release, you will have no contact with your daughter unless she specifically requests it. All stolen funds will be returned with compound interest. The gavel came down with finality. As they led Dad away in shackles, he turned back once. Our eyes met across the courtroom, and I saw not anger or defiance, but the hollow recognition of a man who'd gambled everything and lost. I felt nothing, no satisfaction, no pity, no lingering love. He was simply a stranger who happened to share my DNA. But my revenge wasn't complete. There were still accounts to settle. Victoria had fled to her sister's house in Minneapolis immediately after the trial, but she couldn't escape the financial reckoning. The civil lawsuit I filed, with Grandma's full support and Jonathan's vicious legal expertise, sought not just the return of stolen funds, but punitive damages for emotional distress and conspiracy to commit fraud. Her deposition was a masterpiece of calculated humiliation. She arrived looking like a shadow of her former country club self, her designer clothes replaced by discount store approximations, her perfect manicured nails bitten down to the quick. Mrs. Patterson, Ms. Rodriguez began. Victoria had reverted to her maiden name after filing for divorce. You were aware that your husband was planning to abandon his daughter, correct? I thought he was taking her to a facility, a therapeutic boarding school. Yet you packed no bags for an extended stay. You brought no medical records, no school transcripts, nothing a responsible adult would bring when enrolling a child in a residential program. Victoria's face went red. I wasn't involved in the planning. Ms. Rodriguez slid a printed text exchange across the table. This is from December 15th, 3 days before the abandonment. You texted Mr. Reeves, quote, "Are you sure about the station plan? What if someone calls the police?" His response, "By the time anyone figures out what happened, we'll be in Aspen and she'll be too traumatized to think straight." Your reply, "Perfect. Tyler keeps asking when Sophia is leaving for good. I can't wait to tell him." The deposition continued for 6 hours, each question systematically destroying Victoria's credibility and exposing her complicity. By the end, she was crying, not from remorse, but from the realization that her comfortable life was over. The settlement was substantial. $2.3 million in compensatory and punitive damages, Plus, she had to publicly admit her role in the abandonment scheme. The money didn't matter to me. Grandma's wealth meant I'd never want for anything, but the public humiliation was essential. Victoria's apology, read at a press conference with her lawyer's gun to her head, was everything I'd hoped for. I participated in a cruel plan to abandon a 15-year-old girl for financial gain. I helped convince her father to see her as a burden rather than a blessing. I am ashamed of my actions and accept full responsibility for the harm I caused to Sophia Reeves. The video went viral within hours. Victoria Patterson became a cautionary tale about gold digging and child abuse, her name forever associated with one of the most callous family betrayals in recent memory. But there was one final account to settle. Ashley and Tyler had been placed with Victoria's sister Emma in Minneapolis after CPS removed them from Victoria's care. Through my lawyers, I'd been quietly monitoring their well-being, making sure they had everything they needed. Tyler, now 10, had been writing me letters since the trial ended. Simple, heartfelt notes apologizing for his mother's actions and asking if I was okay. He'd been having nightmares about the abandoned girl at the train station, not knowing I was that girl until after his mother's arrest. I drove to Minneapolis on a warm Saturday in June, 6 months after Dad's sentencing. Emma had agreed to let me meet the children, hoping it might provide closure for everyone. Tyler ran to me the moment I walked into Emma's modest suburban home. "Sophia, are you really okay? Mom said terrible things happened to you because of David." I knelt down to his level, this innocent boy who'd been as much a victim as I had been. "I'm okay now, Tyler. What happened wasn't your fault, and it wasn't your sister's fault either." Ashley, now 14 and looking older than her years, hung back. "I knew," she said quietly. "I knew what they were planning and I didn't stop it. I didn't even try." "You were 12 years old. You weren't responsible for stopping the adults in your life from making terrible choices. But I was glad you were leaving. I wanted my mom to myself and David to focus on us instead of you." Tears ran down her cheeks. "I'm so sorry." I pulled her into a hug, feeling her shoulder with guilt and grief. "Ashley, you were a child protecting what you thought was your territory. That's normal. What the adults did with that normal feeling, that's on them, not you." We spent the afternoon together, 3 kids trying to heal from the wreckage the adults had made of our lives. Emma served lemonade and homemade cookies, creating the kind of normal family afternoon none of us had experienced in years. Before I left, Tyler pressed a folded paper into my hands. "I drew this for you." It was a picture of a girl sitting on a bench, but instead of looking scared and alone, she was standing up, walking away from the station with her head high. At the top, in his careful 10-year-old handwriting, "Sophia is brave." I still have that picture. It sits framed on my desk at Yale, where I'm now a junior studying pre-law with a focus on children's rights. I look at it whenever I need to remember that strength can come from the most unlikely places. The trust fund became fully accessible on my 21st birthday, but I'd barely touched it. Grandma had taught me that money was a tool for building something meaningful, not just acquiring things. I'd use some for college, some for therapy, and some to start the Sophia Blackwood Foundation for Abandoned Children, providing legal aid, counseling, and emergency housing for kids whose parents had failed them. The rest sits in carefully managed investments, growing steadily while I figure out exactly what legacy I want to build with it. I returned to Union Station on the 3rd anniversary of my abandonment, this time not alone. Tyler, now 13 and spending winter break with Emma in Chicago, had asked to see where it all began. Ashley, 17 and thriving in her senior year of high school despite everything, had driven down from Minneapolis to join us. We sat on the bench where I'd spent those 7 hours, not the same one, which had been replaced during renovations, but close enough. The holiday travelers rushed past us, families reuniting and separating, the eternal dance of arrivals and departures. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if he'd come back?" Ashley asked. "If David had changed his mind that day?" I thought about it seriously, the way Dr. Martinez had taught me to examine difficult questions. I would have gone with him. I was so desperate for his approval, so convinced I was worthless without him, that I would have forgiven anything. "And that would have been the real tragedy," Tyler said, now old enough to understand the implications. You would have spent your whole life trying to earn love from someone who wasn't capable of giving it. Instead, I learned that love isn't something you earn. It's something freely given by people who choose to see your worth. I smiled at both of them. Like Emma choosing to raise you two, like Grandma choosing to fight for me, like you two choosing to stay in my life despite everything. My phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Martinez. Remember, healing isn't forgetting what happened. It's choosing what you do with what happened. As we stood to leave, I glanced back once more at the bench. The terrified, abandoned 15-year-old who'd sat there was still part of me, but she wasn't all of me anymore. She was the foundation I'd built strength upon, the catalyst that had transformed me from victim to survivor to victor. Dad was still in federal prison in Indiana, 3 years into his 22-year sentence. He'd written me letters, dozens of them, that I'd returned unopened. Some stories don't need epilogues, some chapters are meant to stay closed. Victoria had moved to Phoenix and was working as a receptionist in a dental office, her dreams of luxury living buried under the weight of her choices. The last I'd heard, she'd been turned down for an apartment lease after the landlord Googled her name. Reputation follows you everywhere in the digital age. My mother had managed to stay sober for 8 months before relapsing spectacularly. She was currently in her third rehab stint, paid for by the state. I felt sorry for her in the abstract way you might feel sorry for any stranger struggling with addiction, but I felt no obligation to rescue her from consequences she'd earned. As for me, I was thriving in ways that 15-year-old girl on the bench could never have imagined. Yale Law School had already accepted me for early admission. The Sophia Blackwood Foundation had helped over 200 children in its first 2 years. I had real friends, healthy relationships, and a grandmother who loved me unconditionally. But perhaps the sweetest victory was the simplest one. I was happy. Genuinely, deeply happy in a way that had nothing to do with revenge or money or proving anyone wrong. I woke up each morning excited about the day ahead, surrounded by people who valued me for who I was rather than what I could provide them. Dad had thought he was throwing away trash that December day. Instead, he discarded the best thing in his life and freed me to discover just how valuable I really was. The abandoned daughter had become everything he'd never allowed her to be. And that, more than any prison sentence or financial ruin, was the most perfect revenge of all. If someone who was supposed to protect you chose money over your well-being, would you find the strength not just to survive, but to transform that betrayal into triumph? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories of resilience, justice, and the power of choosing yourself when no one else will.